Thanks, Bernie. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking your time to come onto the Defence Innovation Network Masterclass for small to medium enterprises, small businesses, in conjunction with APR Intern. So I'm going to start today with the traditional welcome and acknowledgement of country, and then we will get into the program. Each speaker gets about 15 minutes, which includes Q&A. And if you would like to ask a question, you can do that via the Zoom function, and I will read out the questions. So welcome of country. New South Wales Defence Innovation Network acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and the traditional custodians of country through Australia. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So after that welcome, I would like to introduce my boss and the Director of New South Wales Defence Innovation Network, Professor Bradley Williams.
Thanks, Lincoln. Hi, everybody. Yeah, thanks for joining us today. It's wonderful to have you here with us. Today we're going to introduce you to a few of the support mechanisms that are available to our defence industry in New South Wales. As a first introduction, I'll tell you a little bit about the New South Wales Defence Innovation Network, which is a state-based organisation. We have 7 of the leading universities in our membership, and our principal goal is to facilitate connections throughout the defence sector with our academic researchers and the leading skills and facilities that we have across our fabulous universities in the state. Bernie, could you switch to the next slide, please? Thanks. So there are the logos of the universities involved, and you can see from up the University of Newcastle all the way down to University of Wollongong and the unis in between. So it's great to have those universities attached, and we have excellent connections with them. In addition, you might be able to see Mark West, who's our Associate Director in the Defence Innovation Network. Mark is a DST staff member who is seconded full-time to Defence Innovation Network, and Mark is certainly fabulous at connecting our universities and connecting the SMEs in particular in the state to DST and to other parts of defence. So we certainly encourage you to link with us and to use our facilities, use our ability to connect you to our academic network and also through into defence. All right, so Bernie, next slide, please. Thanks. So here we have a snapshot of some of the major funding mechanisms that we have available to us, not only in the state, but also nationwide. And we'll certainly, on request, make these slides available to you so that you can take this information back and digest it, and then potentially come back to us if you need any help with any of these funding mechanisms. We certainly understand them relatively well. We've got connections into most of them, and many of them do rely on collaboration between the industry partner and one or more of our academic institutions, and we are more than happy to facilitate those introductions to you to ensure that you get the access to the correct researchers and the correct facilities that you need to help you with your particular project. So on the top left, you will see APR internships, and I won't say any more about that because we have the lovely Michaela with us who's going to be talking through APR internships a little later. And thanks also to Vaughn for joining us, who's going to be giving a case study on the success of APR internships in his business. So to the right of APR internships, you'll see Innovation Connections. Now this is a federal scheme managed these days through CSIRO. And in a way, it's effectively assured support for eligible companies. So the Innovation Connections has staff that work with your company and with industry, with academic partners to establish a joint project between the two partners, where the funding is, as you can see there, is matched co-funding of up to $50,000 each. So the total project value can be up to $100,000. And this is a really good way to get high-end R&D on your project from one of our academic institutions. To the right of that is the CSIRO CFROS Metcalf STEM Plus scheme. One of the eligibility criteria for that particular scheme is that one needs to already have held an Innovation Connections grant. So the CSIRO CFROS Metcalf scheme requires prior success in Innovation Connections, and then one is eligible for that particular scheme, which gives funding at a higher level and for a greater duration towards a research project, once again for the translation of research into commercialized reality through your company. And then as we move to the right, we scale up in terms of size and duration again. So the Australian Research Council Linkage Project, there you can see funding of between 50 to 300,000, and sometimes even more than that, for 2 to 5 years. So the linkage scheme is a really good way to scale up either from the APR internship or the Innovation Connections or any of the preceding grants to scale up that R&D into something that is of higher scope and of slightly longer duration. And then through the federal system, once again, we have our cooperative research centers, but the project grants, which we abbreviate CRCP, once again, even larger, so between 100,000 to 3 million. And typical eligibility criteria there are that 2 companies need to be involved. So it is looking for a collaborative approach to commercialization and at least one academic partner. So that's the top row. Very quickly down the bottom row, the tech vouchers. That is in a way similar to the Innovation Connections top, but it's a smaller scheme and it's run through the state government. So those and the APR interns are really great ways to kick off a relationship between your company and our academics. The seed project grants through Defence Innovation Network, that's something that we ourselves manage, and that's quite similar to the Innovation Connections in that the product value is up to $50,000 matched cash funding, where the research is conducted at one or more of our academic institutions. And there are possibilities to have a 3-way leverage between the DIN seed project grants, the Innovation Connections above it, and the SME. So there are some circumstances where it's possible, and that's great leverage for your company to get a 1+2 contribution for your research. Then also run through the state government is the New South Wales Physical Sciences Fund. This is run through the Office of the Chief Scientist and Engineer. And this particular fund has as its key objective the opportunity to support latter stage research and technology development in particular towards commercialization. So it's very squarely aimed at non-fundamental, non-early stage research, and more towards the latter stage where we do need to raise the TRL, the technology readiness level, for the development of a prototype or a field trial, or closer towards commercialization. And then to the right, we've got those two defense managed schemes, the Next Generation Technologies Fund and the Defense Innovation Hub. And if you just look towards the bottom of the text, you'll see the Next Gen Technologies Fund typically supports lower TRL, so it has an appetite for risk elements within the research, and quite comfortable to deal with earlier stage research that has a longer time horizon and is more exploratory by nature. And to the right, the Defense Innovation Hub, which is much more tuned towards the commercialization phases of product development. So there are many other schemes besides these ones here, but these are the main ones that would be appropriate for defense SMEs. All right, next slide, please, Bernie. Thanks. So a scheme of some immediacy for us is our seed project leverage funding scheme. You may or may not be aware, hopefully you are aware, of the ICRA call that was recently propagated from DST Group, and then also through Defense Innovation Network and through the industry bodies. So DST Group has a pot of funds available for SMEs to apply for research, products of up to $300,000, as you can see in the fourth bullet point there, the fourth main bullet point, up to $300,000. And DST is managing and approving any successful proposals that are run through ICRA. Now, I've just mentioned the seed project funds that we have available, which is that one-to-one matched co-funding. And what we have now devised is a tool to grow the pot for successful applicants in New South Wales from $300,000 potentially to $350,000. The rules will be quite similar to our standard seed fund, where it's 50,000 plus 50,000 as a matching contribution, and it is possible for your company, if you are successful in this ICRA, to use some of that contribution to make up the industry contribution. And so I encourage you all on the line today to have a look, if you haven't yet, to have a look at the ICRA call. It is also available on the Defense Innovation Network website. So the particular call is up there with relevant links to DST Group. You'll see on the right-hand side what the principal priorities are for the ICRA. So cyber in a relatively broad embodiment as a tier 1 priority, and there are details available on the DST website. We have the tier 2, which encompasses enhanced human performance, integrated ISR, medical countermeasures, and trusted autonomy systems. And then the tier 3 below that, the advanced sensors, directed energy capabilities, material sciences, quantum, and space. Certainly, there will be a very strong slant towards tier 1 and tier 2 proposals. So if your objectives fit into those two, I strongly encourage you to make a submission. And if you intend to apply for our seed project leverage funding scheme, to also submit an EOI to Defense Innovation Network as a heads up to us that you're interested in that. For the DST proposal, you will need to name any participants in your proposal to DST, and we can help you now to link to those potential participants from our universities. So thanks for changing the slide there, Bernie. You can see then this is a little bit of a timeline for the application process. The call has been made. The submission date to ICRA to DST is on the 18th of September, so 2 weeks from today. And between now and then, we do encourage you, as I've said, to think about applications to ICRA and to also think about using the Seed Project Leverage Fund. All right, so thanks, Bernie. Let's move to the next slide, which should be the final one. No, second from last. Okay, so we do have, as I mentioned, Michaela Murphy talking about APR Intern, and we'll hear about that a bit later. So Defence Innovation Network is really interested in supporting the next generation of Australian scientists and engineers to enter the defence sector. And we do that in two ways. One is through PhD scholarships for Australian citizens, and we have 14 running right now. And we have up to 23 vouchers available through the APR Intern, which Michaela will talk about a bit later. So our final slide will be contact details for Defence Innovation Network. And I do encourage you to make contact with us to help so that we can assist you on your commercialization trajectories for your projects. Thanks, Bernie, and thanks, Lincoln.
Thanks very much, Professor Williams. That was an outstanding overview of the Defence Innovation Network and what we can do to help small to medium enterprises connect with both Defence Science and Technology Group and the end user, as well as industry and various state and federal government entities and grant programs. There doesn't actually seem to be any questions that have come through Zoom so far, but we will note that we can get these slides out to everybody after the conclusion of the webinar today. If you could just let us know what it is that you want. In fact, there are some questions just coming through now, and we have 2 minutes. I'll just read them. What is the definition of an SME is one.
Yeah, so we use the Australian Bureau of Statistics definition of an SME. So I believe, and let's say you might be able to correct me there, a turnover of below 200 million, it might be 100, I'm not sure, but we use, and then fewer than 200 staff members. So most of the companies within Australia would fall into that category of a small to medium enterprise. And then the second is, are there any point people to go to help find and approach these grants, or is it done individually by the company? Well, that depends on the particular grant, Ryan. So we ourselves have got connections with Innovation Connections and also the CSIRO CFROS. So that's certainly where we have connections. Through the federal schemes, there it's really just apply and see what happens. So that's, for example, the CRCP and the IOC linkage. So there's no particular point person through those. So just on a higher level, it depends on the particular scheme. Thanks.
And I would just note to that, we've only got a minute left, but I'll use that minute just to say that generally it's in your best interest, if you're applying for one of these grants, that you're already working with the end user. So the service of the Australian Defence Force, and that you're working on solving a problem that they've stated is an issue, current or an emerging issue. And then you have a champion from the Australian Defence Force that you've been working with is always very helpful. Yeah, agreed. So Lincoln, you've half answered John's message there. How do we start? Do we just fill in the form on the website? Again, John, it depends on which particular scheme you're talking about.
But certainly one of the key points is as Lincoln said, the end user, but then also to potentially make contact with research providers to fill in any skills and capability and facilities gaps that you might not have in your company.
And I would also just add one thing. Some programs have different definitions of what an SME is. We'll note that ICRA via DST notes that applicants must be a small to medium enterprise, which is 200 or fewer employees. Yeah. It doesn't actually mention a turnover figure.
Sure. And Trevor, Linda's your question there. No, there are many grants available to defence primes. The ARC linkage is open to you. The CRCP is open to you. So yes, there are schemes that are open to defence primes.
Okay, so we have to move along because we're just running a little bit behind time now. So I'm going to move to our next presenter, and thank you again, Professor Williams. We're going to hear now from Michaela Murphy from APR Intern. She has 15 minutes, and
Thanks,
I welcome Michaela.
Thank you, and hello everyone. This is a tough act to follow after that presentation. But just want to thank Din very much for the opportunity to speak at this masterclass for SMEs as well. Hopefully what I speak about today will be applicable, and you can avail of the APR intern program as well. We've had a high success rate, so long may it continue, and hopefully the partnership with Din can flourish a little bit further. But just to kick off, I suppose I'll just give a bit of an overview of the program itself and how we usually work, and I'll speak a little bit more on our partnership with DIN and how defence SMEs can avail of the scheme. But what we essentially are, we're Australia's only not-for-profit postgraduate industry PhD programme across all disciplines and sectors. And we help place PhD students into industry internships for short-term projects. And the whole aim of this programme is to give PhD students a bit more exposure into industry outside of academia, and to, I suppose, broaden the skills gap between academia to industry and help them become more employable once they decide to leave academia. As well as that, we also give businesses the chance to, access this high-end talent for short-term projects and help them continuously innovate, I suppose, at a good value rate. It's probably the best way of putting it. But as you can see, the benefits are that you are getting, these rapid results with high-end research talent, and you're also able to retain any intellectual property that is produced across the program, the project. We work in, I suppose, one of two main ways. So we would work with industry partners and helping them come up with a project that they can use this PhD students, and then we would I suppose advertise an expression of interest on our site, which would promote the project, and then we would also push that project out to our network of universities, and we're spread across Australia as well, not just in New South Wales. I'm just one of two in a team here in New South Wales, but we have business developers across the country. But we push these projects out to our network and tap into the academic leads in whatever project, I suppose, sector that we're centering on, and then they'll help us get these PhD students to apply. We'll screen those candidates and then help the industry partner, I suppose, place them and help them form a project plan then across the 3 to 6 months they want the student for. And we'll help the industry partner as well identify milestones and, I suppose, goals that they want to achieve throughout the duration of the project. And we'll keep an eye on things and how they progress as well, and make sure that all parties are happy. So it's worked out, I suppose, pretty well in that we have a high amount of students that actually go on to be offered full-time positions with the industry partner as well. And I suppose obviously that's a great thing for the student, but it's also a great test bed for industry partners as well to, I suppose, see how they can help mold a prospective employee as well, and just make sure that they are a culture fit, you know, without having to commit to any full-time contracts and such. So yeah, it's been a benefit in that regard as well. So I'll just move on to, I suppose, the juicy bit, which is financials of how the internship works. And I've also just remembered that I've forgotten to specify as well, another way in which we work as well is because obviously we do have a strong network within academia as well. Sometimes we do have academics who already have strong ties with industry come to us with their prospective projects, and they'll already have a student in mind as well, which means we can skip that, I suppose, step of having to advertise on our site, and we can help the academic mentor along with their student and the industry partner shape that project plan in line with the eligibility for APR intern, how to get the rebates, which I'll just go on to now. So I'll just skip on. Bernie, if you could skip onto the next slide, sorry. Thank you. So outside of defence, this is how typically a project cost would break down. And this is, I suppose, outside of the additional voucher that we hold with the Defence Innovation Network. So a typical 3-month project would cost an industry partner upfront $20,000. And what that encompasses is a $5,500 one-off academic mentor fee for obviously the student supervisor. And typically that will go back into their research funds. And then we also have another $5,500 fee, which goes back into the administration costs of APR intern. The students throughout their project then will receive a $3,000 stipend for each month that they complete in the project. And then on completion of the 3 months, the industry partner then will receive a 50% rebate from government. So it's a nice little plus. And again, as I said, it works out well for companies trying to, I suppose, just continuously innovate in a short-term project, and as well as that, also have some high-end research talent working on it as well. But in terms of DIN and what we're doing in the defence SME sector, we have launched a partnership which is in place, I think, over a year now, which means that defence SMEs, or SMEs in general that maybe are looking at defence projects, can avail of a further voucher. And I'll just, Bernie, if you could skip on to the next slide. Possible. The next slide. We have a third slide. Oh, there we are. So we have an additional voucher that can be applied to the typical 3-month project. And this means that eligible projects will receive a 10,000 defence innovation voucher, which would bring the net cost of a 3-month project down to 5,000. And there are, I suppose, an eligibility criteria, as with any sort of voucher, that you can see. It obviously has to be a New South Wales based business or intern. And as I mentioned before, we're I suppose, well established within the New South Wales University Network. And Bradley had mentioned the universities that didn't work closely with, and that's just like APR intern as well. The DIN vouchers can only be applied once to one business per year. And you must also be a DIN participant or an SME, and that's obviously within the criteria that Bradley and Lincoln had mentioned in, I suppose, defining what an SME is. And then, yes, the project must be relevant within the defence sector. But I mean, these projects have varied. We have a long-established relationship with DSTG and DSI, who Dr. Vaughn Shanks will speak about how they had availed of their voucher there, and they had actually applied it in a cybersecurity project. But I mean, we've dealt with engineering, computer science. It's vast, basically. But it's so. I suppose the best way of describing the program is a good tool for SMEs to avail of this talent, and to also get that 50% rebate as well as the DIN voucher. So at a low cost and high value to your business to help you further innovate. And especially now, I suppose, in this new normal, and I hate using that turn of phrase because I'm sure we're sick to death of hearing about it, but it is a great way of accessing, you know, extra resources without having to commit to full-time employment at the moment, and also helping your business perhaps pivot in a different direction without having to make full-time commitments as well. I'll leave my contact details as well in the chat window should you have any other further questions. I know this has been a bit of a flash in the pan, and I'd be more than happy to share some of the templates that we use in advertising projects or project plans as well, just to give you an idea of how the scheme works. But apart from that, it's that's all for me.
Thank you, Michaela. That was outstanding also. We do actually have a question for you, and that is, does the APR intern, does the student have to be an Australian citizen?
Great question. Yes, sorry, that's something I should have mentioned. So outside of defence-related projects, we can actually place Australian non-Australian citizens and permanent residents actually into projects. We actually, last year we did reach our international student cap, unfortunately, which means that any international student we placed in an internship, the industry partner won't receive the 50% rebate. But that's not to say that some businesses won't discount an international student. Sometimes businesses are just, I suppose, eager to retain that talent. But in the Defence Innovation Network voucher eligibility scheme, unfortunately, the student will have to be an Australian citizen, just due to, I suppose, the security aspect of some of the projects that they'd be working on.
Indeed, that makes sense. All right. So if there are no other questions, and I'm just checking my Q&A and checking the webinar chat.
Oh, I just see Trevor Linders as with regards to, I suppose, return on investment and how that's managed. So as I said, we'll keep a track, and the students are expected to present to us midway through the presentation and then the final presentation. And I suppose in regards to return on investment, that's something for the business to really to gauge, you know, throughout the project. But we do have a number of, I suppose, surveys that have presented to us that, you know, we do have a high success rate both within industry and academia. Over 90% of our academics actually go on to reuse the scheme, and I think we have close to 70% industry, you know, taking on the scheme, trying to avail of the scheme again and place students in. So it's a good indicator of how the program is viewed by both industry and academia. And then, as I said, you know, a large proportion of our students go on to secure full-time positions within their industry partner as well. So
I would echo that, Michaela. With the some of the feedback that we've had at DIN from this program from our industry partners has been absolutely excellent. And indeed, I know of a number of students that have gone on to do further work outside of the APR intern program with those companies.
And I'd also point out that one of the principal objectives is that the student comes and works with you in your company, in your labs, with your people and your facilities, noting that they can reach back into the university. So when it comes to quality management and ROI measurement, that's really very much in your control.
Absolutely, and well, hopefully Vaughn can give a bit of a positive testimony on the value of the program as well. But
and that's excellent timing, Michaela. So thank you very much. That was a really excellent presentation on APR intern and the really great work that you do. So much appreciate that, Michaela. So now we're going to move on. We're right on time. Thanks for that again, Michaela. We're going to move on to Dr. Vaughn Shanks of Sidearm Technologies. And he's going to provide a presentation really on just what we were talking about just then. So I'll turn over to Vaughn.
Thanks, Lincoln. Yeah, so I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Sidearm Technologies. We're I guess you'd call us a cybersecurity startup, you know, a small company based out of Melbourne, Victoria. And we are a software vendor. So we make software and then we license that to our customers. By way of a bit of background on me, previously I had worked for a Silicon Valley based startup, a very, very innovative company. So I guess that's where, before I started Sidearm, that's where I guess I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and about the about how to build technology for enterprises. And then prior to that, I did spend some time, well, actually almost a decade, working in the Department of Defense, so familiar with that world as well. And prior to that, I was in fact doing a PhD back in the day. So this program really appealed to me. Having that background in research, I can appreciate how research can really contribute a lot to product development. And I think it's something in Australia we haven't utilized to the extent that we could. I think, other countries abroad are much better at commercializing research and are bringing researchers on that journey. And so really, I think for me, it's quite interesting to explore this space. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring on an APR intern. And so hopefully this case study will give you a bit of a picture of what our company does and where I saw an opportunity to incorporate some research and how we went about doing that and what the results were. So first of all, so I'll just, okay, yep. So just a bit about the company. So the problem that we solve is that cyber incident response is manual and slow. So basically you have security operations teams working out of the security operations center, and a lot of the work they do is very painstaking and manual. These are very smart, experienced people that are in very short supply, and you don't have to look very far to find headlines about what happens when cybersecurity incidents are not properly managed and things blow up. So we're solving an important problem and trying to basically alleviate the cognitive burden and the burnout factor on those security analysts, and that will have massive ramifications for cyber resilience if we can get that right. And so what we've done in this space is to build a platform that goes in the center of security operations. We take data, telemetry data from different sources and use that to create cases. The operators on the platform can then interact with those cases and prosecute the investigation of an incident. And then there's other reporting features and ways to integrate off platform as well. So just a bit about sort of the platform and what it does. So when I came to APR intern, the question that I had in my mind is, how can we leverage machine learning to make incident triage better? So if you imagine you're in a security operations center, you're one of maybe half a dozen people, you're looking at these screens on the wall, there's alerts coming at you from different sources. Many of them are going to be false alarms. Some of them could be something that looks fairly innocuous, like someone typed in a password wrong, but it's actually you're about to be hacked by cyber criminals. So how do we make sure that the alerts that are most likely to yield a real incident are brought to the attention of the incident responder quickly, so that they can start their analysis and narrow that window of opportunity that gives the attacker an asymmetric advantage. So we really want to, this is a race against time, and using machine learning as a lever, as a tool to enable your incident responders to react more quickly. So this is not my first involvement with machine learning. Actually, my PhD was based around machine learning at high scale. So I already knew a bit about the challenges we would face. And I do recall when I was working at the Department of Defense being quite disappointed when the fancy machine learning system I built was quite fairly criticized by an Army sergeant who said to me, this is great, but I can't really go up to my superiors and tell them I let a machine make a decision for me. I need to be able to explain why this happened. And so there's this idea that we need to preserve human agency. So how do we use the power of machine learning without actually devolving into a situation where we're handing off control to an algorithm that perhaps is not producing optimal results all the time. Now, to that point, machine learning algorithms work very well. There's a bunch of off-the-shelf solutions. There's well-known algorithms. Back when I did my PhD, when I started in 2000, there were already great machine learning algorithms. Where they fall down is basically the data that you're using to train the models and how you keep those models up to date. So the machine learning is only ever as good as the data that you pull into it. And in cybersecurity, we're dealing with a kind of a game of, you know, 4-dimensional chess against a determined and very creative adversary. And those models are going to need to change week by week. As soon as you find an effective countermeasure for a kind of attack, the attackers will invariably change their approach and try something new. So the question was, how do we take expert human feedback and cause these models to be retrained frequently so we can keep up with changes in the environment and with the threat? And this is hard to do because, you know, one approach is we bring a bunch of people into a room and we make them sit there and you know, click buttons and say, you know, good, bad on different things they see until we collect enough data. But no one wants to do that. And as I mentioned, these people are in short supply. So we needed a way to build a system into the platform to collect relevance feedback from the operators as they're prosecuting the investigation and the triage of incidents, and use that to build better machine learning models to enable better triage of these incidents. So it really is, you know, a great sort of research area in that sense. So the architecture that we adopted, you know, during the course of the internship was we had the alerts coming into the sidearm platform, so coming out of your log management system. We took the telemetry from those alerts, and then we took the user activity logs. So this is where the user has responded to an incident. They've either changed the severity on the incident, they've added comments to it, they might have closed the incident without even really giving it a second look. All of that is relevance feedback. You're taking very experienced incident responders, you know, decades of experience and know-how. They're looking at this telemetry from a machine. They're making a split-second decision, you know, performing some activity on the platform. All of that is signaling of whether this incident should be taken seriously or not. We take that feedback, we use that to build regression models using Google TensorFlow. And then from that, we can use those regression models to rank new alerts that come in. And so we're not handing off agency to the machine. What we're doing is actually using regression to rank the incoming intrusions so that we can determine which things the incident responder should look at first. So and by doing that, we narrow that window of opportunity that the attacker has and give them less of a temporal advantage. So that's a bit about the architecture.
Vaughn, can I just interrupt there and apologise because we've only got a couple of minutes left before our next speaker. I do have one question here for you from the audience. If I could ask that, and also if I could get your thoughts on your experience with APR Intern would be great. The question is, does Sidearm see the potential for an internal Australian standalone network for communication in emergency situations such as recent fires? So if you could do that in a minute.
Yeah, to be honest, that's not an area that I know a whole lot about, but if you have a customer in mind that would want that kind of that capability, then sure, I think it could be a useful project. You know, I think it's all about the framing. Framing it as a research question really is key to all of this. Yeah. So I was just going to roll quickly through the actual internship itself. We had a PhD candidate, Paul Black, from Federation University, joined us for 5 months. We got generous support from DSI down in Victoria with a voucher to help make that more affordable for us. The initial work was on building some platform features to make sure we had that rich logging to do the model building. And then finally, weaving that together into the actual machine learning component that does the model building and the relevance rankings. So it was great industry experience for the intern. He got to work on a commercial enterprise software project. And you know, it's industry experience that I would have relished if I'd had that opportunity when I was a PhD candidate. And for an early stage company such as us, so a startup with you know, very little in the amount of funding we have to spend, this is a great opportunity to get some high quality R&D done and push your product further along. So in summary, I think it's, if you can frame your product, some requirement of your product as a research question, then I think this is a very cost-effective way to get some high quality work done. And it's a huge benefit to all people involved.
Well, thank you very much, Vaughn. That was an excellent presentation. And if you ever feel like you want to leave the state of Victoria for New South Wales, just let us know and we'll assist in those efforts, given, well, we all know what that's given. And it's really good to hear a live case study on how APR intern has assisted industry. So well done for that. I'm going to move on now quickly because we're 1 minute behind schedule to Mr. Tim Owen of Hunter Defence, which is one of the most proactive industry associations out there just in the northern suburbs of Sydney, or the northern suburbs of Sydney. So I'll hand over to Tim, who has 10 minutes, and thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, g'day, Lincoln, thanks, and g'day everybody, how are you? 2 seconds worth of background. I chair a thing called the Hunter Defence Industry Task Force. Essentially, it's a mixture of what I would call a collaboration of cooperatives. So it's HunterNet, the business chamber up here, AIDEN, AIG, ICN, Regional Development Australia, the university and the TAFE. So we all have membership bases, but we thought this was the best way to basically collectively work with a broad swathe of defence industry. So we have a number of SMEs here, and you would probably realise with the RAF base at Williamstown here, clearly aviation is the main focus. So we have BAE, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, but there is a big SME base here. So our job as this industry task force is probably twofold in the broad. If you look up, and what I mean by looking up is looking at defence and primes. Our job as a task force is to essentially articulate the value proposition of the SMEs that reside within our industry base in the Hunter region. And that's an important role that we do. But importantly, what I'm going to talk about today is if you look down or look at the SMEs, our job, we feel, is to best prepare them to step into the defence contracting piece, if you like. So we devised what we call the Defence Readiness Seminar Series. So we put this together late last year, and essentially it was a series of 11 face-to-face seminars where we split it essentially into 3 key areas as well in terms of experience of business. So Explorer was really the ab initio. So mum and dad who make a widget who want to sell it to Thales, we give them what's known as a defence introduction, and they can make a decision one way or the other whether they think it's worthwhile for their industry to physically step in to the defence piece. Then we go, if you like, the middle of the road, what we call the exponent, and we go through a whole series of information on business development, legal, the security program, ISO standards, cyber regulatory issues, etc. And then we step thirdly into the more experienced, or the expert as we call them, where we go through some very targeted areas in export controls, the internet threat at a higher end of cyber, and some of the advanced ISO requirements. So they're the 3, if you like, the 3 levels that we pitched at. Now we began the series, and in March, COVID hit. So we immediately had to look at how do we still continue to do this. So we have converted that face-to-face series into an online series. So again, it is an online series of, if you like, of 11 lectures, and they are defence introduction, business development, defence tendering, introduction to ISO standards, industry security program, legal considerations, collaboration with industry and with defence, cyber regulatory controls, export controls, custodial information in the broad, and then advanced ISO, as I mentioned. So we've put that together in an 11 module, if you like, series where we have a series of e-learning handouts, we conduct webinars, and we also podcast. But we also, in the COVID situation, we added 2 additional ones in there called mental health in the workplace, which I think we're all acknowledging to some large degree, and another one which is business continuity as you emerge from COVID. So those 13 modules are currently being run. The first two, mental health and business continuity, are currently being run at the moment. And we're very confident, and we've spoken to the Minister, Minister Price, that we will be funded through the new SARDI grants to roll out their next 11 beginning in the October timeframe. So while I'm not in the innovation space, we tried to work as hard as we could possibly do to give small and medium enterprises as much of a leg up in the defence space as we could as we all go through this COVID period. So it's working out quite well. Certainly the mental health and the business continuity have been extremely well attended. I think we've had about, we can take about 40 applicants in each one of those, but we have another series essentially we're going to run again to be funded. So it requires funding to do this, obviously, and we'll get that from the feds as well as the New South Wales government have come to the party to co-fund that. That's really, Lincoln, all I wanted to say. You can, if you are interested, if your business is interested in that, or you have, if you like, businesses that you work with who you find might be interested in it, you can always go to our defence site, which is hunterdefence.org.au. And I think this is the only program of this nature that is being run in Australia, much less at a regional level. While we tend to focus on, obviously, the Newcastle and the Hunter for our primary applicants, we are certainly willing to take other applicants, particularly from around regional New South Wales, to be part of the process. So again, if you go to the website, as I said, it's hunterdefence.org.au. You'd be very, very welcome to register. We do this with a company called Gold Group. They essentially are the consultants who run it out. And importantly, we don't just use academics, we use people who have been in business before. So there's a lot of experience who've been in the defence business, I should say. So there's a lot of experience being put out there. We're not an RTO in that context, though we do partner with the TAFE. It really is, as I said, it's a readiness seminar series. We don't physically say, well, here's a you know, an ASO 1000 or 9001. We're going to teach you that, but we tell you where to go to get that level of experience. It essentially says, if you want to get into defence, these are the things you need to meet, and this is how you need to do it. So that's basically it at the moment, Lincoln, and that's a very short summary of how we go about that, mate.
Yes, indeed. Thanks very much, Tim. You guys are certainly very proactive up in your neck of the woods, and as you mentioned, you've got a few key Commonwealth bases and assets up in that region, particularly in aerospace. So anybody that is interested in connecting with you will no doubt know how to do that. You can just Google Hunter Defence, or you'll find the contact details there. So I had written for everyone to stay around because I thought that we had a survey that we usually put out. It looks like we don't have that survey. So I apologise for that, but you can let us know individually. We will send out copies of the presentations to anybody that has an interest. So just let us know if you want copies of the presentations today. But otherwise, I will just throw back to my boss, Professor Bradley Williams, to give the vote of thanks and sign off, because we are at the end of our proceedings and we're finished a little bit early, to see if there's anything else we need to cover. There doesn't seem to be any more questions coming into either the Q&A or the Zoom chat. So let me hand over to Professor Williams.
Thanks, Lincoln, much appreciated. Yes, I would very much like to offer my thanks to Michaela and Vaughn and Tim for joining us today, for your time and effort in presenting, and for bringing across your expertise and offers of assistance to the folks joining us today. And for our defence sector, I would encourage you to work with Defence Innovation Network. It's a great tool for you to have in your arsenal to join to the very high end R&D skills and facilities that are available across the network, and also in particular to consider the APR intern and the Defence Innovation Network voucher. You know, to get a PhD level person in your company, if you are successful with the voucher, for the total cost of $8,000 for 5 months, is dare I say, as good as it gets, and is well below minimum wage for a PhD level person. So that's really good. So thank you all for joining us today. Much appreciated. Lincoln, thanks for hosting. Back to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Williams. And I do have a question here actually that's just come through from Len Henry. How do I ask for copies of the presentations? Is it via email? Yes, you can just email. If you go onto the Defence Innovation Network website, you'll see the generic info@defenceinnovationnetwork.com, which is right there on your screen right now. If you just want to email that, we will get the presentations out to you as soon as we can. And as Professor Williams stated, we encourage you to stay in touch with us, and wherever we can help you and connect you with the right people, we will certainly do that. And again, thank you to the presenters, and I think we'll sign off and go and get a bite to eat.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.